he'll use the word real later. Something unproved, something in a trance. This word trance will take us to who learns my lesson complete. Something escaped from the anchorage and driving free. We have to think of Song of the Open Road when we hear a set of lines like that. In other words, I want to challenge myself to live a real life. And again, we cannot help but read these lines and think about our Thoreau's, Walden. I went to the woods because I would to live deliberately, right? And to front only the essential facts. And not to discover that I had not lived. Living is so dear. We'll obviously play the game here. Oh, now he jumps to the next one. To work in mines or foraging iron. So notice we've gone from fishermen now to miners. Foundry casting, the foundry itself, the rude high roof, the ample and shadowed space, the furnace, the hot liquid poured out and running. So obviously he's seen this. Whitman was a great observer as a poet, right? And so now he's going to translate all of these observations. Then, from the miners, he's going to go to the soldier, to the warrior. And we're going to get some very interesting lines here, because obviously readers of this poem will immediately think about the tragedy of the American Civil War. But notice how there's an idealism at play here. Oh, to resume the joys of the soldier. Now, we're going to talk more about this when we hit the drum tap section later in Leaves of Grass. To feel the presence of a brave commanding officer, to feel his sympathy. Now, obviously, there may be a bit of idealizing in terms of officers, commanding officers and their sympathy. To behold his calmness. That is to say, most likely we're talking now not just about the soldier, but probably about the commanding officer. It could be any number of great commanding officers that he may be thinking of. Obviously, we're probably Ulysses S. Grant. To be warmed in the rays of his smile. Now, obviously, we're getting some idealism here. To go to battle. To hear the bugles play and the drums beat. We're again going to have a whole section called drum taps. To hear the crash of artillery. To see the glittering of the bayonets and musket balls in the sun. Again, notice all the imagery that's going on here. To see men fall and die and not complain. Pure idealism here, right? To taste the savage taste of blood. To be so devilish. To gloat so over the wounds and deaths of the enemy. Now, there's any number of concerns here, obviously. By the way, the use of this idea, savage, 1 hour to madness and joy, you'll remember that word savage gets used. We're going to see this word devilish used again in the artilleryman's vision, the old mad joy. And there we'll comment on it as well, being a somewhat idealized use of the word. To gloat, this only use of that word in all of Leaves of Grass, so over the wounds and deaths of the enemy. Remember, 1861 to 65 is the American Civil War. Remember, as we've said in earlier lectures, Whitman himself saw the horror as a nurse of all of the terrible things that happened through the war. And yet notice here, he's going to celebrate the gloating. Now obviously we have to pause here at 3A and jot down that final line from Emily Dickinson's "Success is counted sweet, not one of all the hosts who fell today knows so well as he defeated dying." We've given a full lecture on that set of lines as well. And then from here, from the warriors, we now jump to the whaleman. And think about the fact that Moby Dick is published in 1851, and it is the volume of all volumes that will describe how you kill a whale. Now we're going to get a set of lines here. I shared this set of lines with my young son when he was quite young, and I was teaching him to read. And this set of lines actually made him quite sad. Let's just read them and enjoy the image that is being displayed. Oh, the whaleman's joy. Oh, I cruise my old cruise again. I feel the ship's motion under me. I feel the Atlantic breeze is fanning me. I hear the cry again, set down from the masthead. There she blows. Again, I spring up the rigging to look with the rest. We descend, wild with excitement. Notice we go from I to we. I leap in the lowered boat And notice the energetic language here, the language of energy. We rode toward our prey where he lies. We approach stealthy and silent. I see the mountainous mass, lethargic, basking. I see the harpooner standing up. I see the weapon dart from his vigorous arm. Oh, swift again, far out in the ocean, the wounded whale settling, running to windward tows me. Again I see him rise to breathe. We row close again. I see a lance driven through his side. Early readers of this poem, of course, had to think about the gospel account in John 19:34 of the spear in the side of Christ. I see a lance driven through his side, pressed deep, turned in the wound. Obviously, this is horrific, right? Again, we back off. I see him settle again. The life is leaving him fast. As he rises, he spouts blood. I see him swim in circles, narrower and narrower, swiftly cutting the water. I see him die. He gives one convulsive leap in the center of the circle and then falls flat and still in the bloody foam. You can't help but think of George Orwell shooting an elephant, a set of lines that we've already commented on. And of course, this is a graphic image. Let's just say it out loud. It is something, however, that Whitman's audience would be far more aware of than obviously modern audiences today. And then from here, the killing of a whale, he moves to a patriarch and a matriarch. Watch this. Oh, the old manhood of me, the noblest joy of all, my children and grandchildren, my white hair and beard, my largeness, calmness, majesty out of the long stretch of my life. Oh, ripened joy of womanhood. Oh, happiness at last. I'm more than 80 years of age. I am the most venerable mother. How clear is my mind, how all people draw nigh to me. What attractions are these beyond any before? What bloom more than the bloom of youth? What beauty is this that descends upon me and rises out of me? Let's pause for a moment. Notice he goes from male to female. You'll remember this passage from I Sing the Body Electric, passage number 3, I Knew a Man, in this celebration of an individual. And we told you that it's not completely clear who Whitman was maybe referencing as he saw this. Notice now we're going to go to an old man. The manhood of me, the noblest joy of all. The argument being that as people get really old, they have all this incredible joy in their old age. Children, grandchildren, white hair and beard. I told you about Whitman and his own white hair and beard. My largeness, calmness, majesty out of the long stretch of my life. And then ripened joy of womanhood. Happiness at last. I'm more than 80 years of age. Now in 1860, Whitman was 41. He dies at 72. He never actually makes it to 80. But he obviously was thinking about what it was like to be old. I'm the most venerable mother. It's a popular word, venerable, in Leaves of Grass. How clear is my mind? Again, probably idealizing at times maybe old age. How all people draw nigh to me. He's going to make this reference to magnetism again later. What attractions are these beyond any before? What bloom, obviously, Leaves of Grass, more than the bloom of youth? What beauty is this that descends upon me and rises out of me? Now, obviously, the question is, who are all these rhetorical questions for? In other words, he's going to make the argument, sounding very much like, of course, Tennyson's Ulysses, you and I are old. Old age hath had its honor and its toil. Death closes all, but something ere the end, some work of noble note may yet be done, not unbecoming men that strove with gods. A set of lines that Whitman knew well and obviously is celebrating here as well. And then, from the patriarch and the matriarch, note the irony, by the way, to our knowledge, Whitman never had children, although he claimed to have had children, especially one that he fathered in New Orleans. We've talked about that elsewhere. From all of that, we now go to the great orator tradition. Oh, the orator's joys, to inflate the chest, to roll the thunder of the voice out from the ribs and throat, to make the people rage, weep, hate, despair with yourself, to lead America, to quill America. The great tongue, any number of scholars, David Reynolds comes to mind, has pointed out that in some ways this little set of lines might be pointing or gesturing towards Whitman, what Whitman himself longs to be, the great orator, through Leaves of Grass. Now, of course, when he's thinking about orators, he could be thinking obviously about Lincoln, as well as Stephen A. Douglas, who Lincoln will debate. He could be thinking about Frederick Douglass, maybe the greatest orator of all, if not him, Daniel Webster. All of these great speakers, great orators. And look at how what he kind of focuses on. Inflate the chest, roll the thunder of the voice out from the ribs and throat. To make, it's interesting, right? To make the people rage, weep, hate, desire with yourself. To lead America. To quell, only use of, in all of these graphs, only time it gets used this way. To quell America with a great tongue. And again, with a great tongue is also a phrase only used one time here in this, in Leaves of Grass, and right here it is. It's possible that I think Whitman does see himself as the great orator, the great writer of orator, and the great, in other words, you can read Leaves of Grass as almost like a single long dramatic monologue, dramatic speech, and many have read it that way. And then from here, we're going to go to a more metaphysical kind of rendering. Oh, the joy of my soul, leaning poised on itself. And obviously we jump to the Song of Myself, passage 5, and those very controversial lines, right? Receiving identity through materials and loving them, observing, go back to Song of Myself, passage number 1, right? Where he's observing a spear of summer grass, and absorbing them. My soul vibrated back to me from them, from sight, hearing, touch, reason, articulation, comparison, memory, and the like. There's 7 of those listed, right? The real life of my senses and flesh, transcending my senses and flesh. Go back to Song of Myself, passage 48. I've said that the body is not more than the soul. I said the soul is not more than the body, and nothing, not God is greater to one than oneself is. We're going to get to that one here in a few minutes as well. My body done with materials, my sight done with my material eyes, proved to me this day beyond cavil that it is not my material eyes which finally see. This is pure Plato's Republic 7, isn't it? Nor my material body which finally loves, walks, laughs, shouts, embraces, procreates. Got 6 of those, right? It's an interesting argument that in the end he's going to make the argument that the soul transcends the body, transcends the flesh in provocative ways. And then from here, when the poem gets kind of esoteric and a reader might begin to go, huh? What are you talking about? Dude, what are you talking about? He then goes right back to the most physical of images and celebrates the farmer. Now, obviously, we've seen this a number of times. Oh, the farmer's joys. And then he's going to list 8 different states, right? Ohioans, Illinoisians, Wisconsinese, Canadians, Iowans, Kansans, Missourians, Oregonese, joys. He obviously is kind of making up some of these words as he goes. But notice the range of states. That is to say, he's celebrating that in some ways, America is foundationally built around people who grow things. To rise at peep of day, Song of Myself, passage 3, withdraws at peep of day with stealthy tread right here. To rise at peep of day and pass forth nimbly to work, to plow land in the fall for winter-sown crops, to plow land in the spring for maize, to train orchards, to graft the trees, to gather apples in the fall. In other words, it's an amazing thing what farmers will do, the way that they work. And for Whitman, the farmer is a perfect metaphor of America because of the very things that he just played with. And then he goes to bathing, swimming. Oh, to bathe in the swimming bath. We have to think of Song of Myself, passage 11, of course. Or in a good place along shore, to splash the water. Think about the way he uses dash there in Song of Myself 46. To walk ankle deep or race naked along the shoreline. You'll remember from Song of Myself passage 2, that right, undisguised and naked kind of thing. This word picture of going out and running along the shoreline naked. And then all of a sudden from there, he jumps to the idea of running, and we're back to Eidolons, oh, to realize space. The plenteousness, and only time that word gets used in Leaves of Grass of all, that there are no bounds to emerge and be of the sky, of the sun and moon and flying clouds, as one with them. Now, it's going to begin to sound very transcendental, very mystical here. Go back to our Emerson study, and especially his classic essay, Nature, or any number of other Emerson essays. Circles comes to mind. And now he's going to get a little bit more personal. Oh, the joy of a manly selfhood. To be, and we're going to get 6 of these twos, right? To be servile to none. To defer to none. Not to any tyrant known or unknown. Remember Song of Myself, creeds and schools and abeyance, right? To walk with erect carriage, steps springy and elastic. We think of Thoreau, obviously with this idea of the erect carriage. We even think about our Mushashi's Book of 9 Rings, for those of you who are familiar with that classic text of fighting. To look with a calm gaze or a flashing eye. We've seen some of this imagery already in Leaves of Grass. To speak with a full and sonorous voice out of a broad chest. We heard this earlier with our orators. To confront with your personality all the other personalities of the earth. Notice it's not of America, but it is of the earth. And of course the word earth is a foundational word to reading Leaves of Grass. And then he'll begin to speak directly to you, the reader. We've seen this before. Watch this. Knowest thou the excellent joys of youth? By the way, this is the 20th joys for those of you who are counting. Joys of the dear companions and of the merry word and laughing face. Notice the rhetorical questions here. Joy of the glad light beaming day. Joy of the wide breath games. And again, both in and out of the game, you'll remember our use of it from the Song of Myself. Joy of sweet music. Joy of the lighted ballroom and the dancers. Remember, we saw some of this in Song of Myself, passage 15. We also saw it at the conclusion, spoken of in somewhat derogative terms, in Song of the Open Road. Joy of the plenteous dinner. Strong carouse and drinking. Now, for Whitman, remember, he was part of the temperance movement, so it almost seems as if he's celebrating the drinking and carousing of alcohol that earlier in his life maybe he was against. And then he moves on. Yet, O my soul supreme, knowest thou the joys of pensive thought? Now he's going to get to some of the more negative elements. You'll remember passage 6, the Song of Myself, right? Joys of the free and lonesome heart, the tender, gloomy heart. Now again, we're back to his theodicy. This is why we say it's an informed optimism. It's not a blind optimism. It's an informed optimism that says, hey, I know what it is to have some pain, to be alone, to be gloomy. Joys of the solitary walk. The spirit bowed yet proud. The suffering and the struggle. This idea that I've known what it is, that at times I've been bowed. And go back to our comments on Shelley's Ode to the West Wind, when he makes that same observation, right? Yet proud, the suffering and the struggle. He says, I know all of that. I know all of that. The agonistic throes. Now, this is a reference to the ancient Greek tradition of meaning contest between athletes or arts, the arts themselves. The ecstasies, only used, by the way, in all of Leaves of Grass. Joys of the solemn musings, day or night. Only other time this word musings gets used in Broadway passage 2. Joys of the thought of death. Notice here it's capitalized. When we think immediately of Song of Myself, passage 6. The great spheres, time and space. Again, capitalized time and space, taking us back to Eidolons at the beginning. Prophetic joys of better, loftier love's ideals. The divine wife. The sweet, eternal, perfect comrade. Notice all of these are questions that he says, are you familiar with these searchings, with these challenges? By the way, comrade makes us think of Camerero, doesn't it, in a Song of the Open Road. Joys, all thine own undying one. Joys worthy thee, O soul. This idea of undying is again part of the idea of progress, no question. And then to return back to defer to none, spirit bowed yet proud. Oh, while I live, to be the ruler of life, not a slave. And of course, Frederick Douglass would understand exactly what is being gestured at here. To meet life as a powerful conqueror. We're going to hear about this when we get to By Blue Ontario's Shores. Democracy, the destined conqueror. No fumes, only used, by the way, bad smells. No ennui, the French word for boredom. No more complaints or scornful criticisms. Go back to the opening lines of Song of the Open Road. To these proud laws of the air, and of course Whitman knew about Emerson's very essay laws, of the air, the water, and the ground, proving my interior soul impregnable. You can't hurt me on the inside. And nothing exterior shall ever take command of me. This idea, when bad things happen, no longer ask, why did this happen to me? But rather, why did this happen for me, fundamental to reading Whitman's Theodicy, as we've said earlier in lectures. For, now we get to the end of the poem. For not life's joys alone I sing, repeating, and then notice the use of the dash, the joy of death. By the way, this is the 40th exclamation point for those of you keeping count. The beautiful touch of death. Notice death capitalized, and we have to go back to Song of Myself, passage 6, the beautiful uncut hair graves. Soothing and benumbing a few moments for reasons, myself discharging my excruciatus body to be burned or rendered to powder or buried. By the way, this word, excruciatus, is used one other time, to one shortly to die. In other words, he's recognizing that as the body dies, it goes back to the earth from which it came. Dust thou art, to dust returnest. Rendered to powder or buried. My real body, and again that use of the word real, doubtless left to me for other spheres. And there we are at Plato's Phaedo, no question. We've given full lectures on that at learnstrong.net. My voided body, nothing more to me, returning to the purifications, further offices, eternal uses of the earth. Song of Myself, passage 6, Song of Myself, passage 52. Oh, to attract by more than attraction. Now, this idea of the magnetism thing, starting obviously with William Gilbert from 1540 to 1603. Magnetism. How is it I know not? Yet, behold, this idea of I don't know it, but I can see it. The something which obeys none of the rest. It's offensive, never defensive, yet how magnetic it draws. This idea that we are drawn to each other through compelling energy. Here's his argument, and it's going to be the same argument that Wordsworth makes in Tintern Abbey. When you have a certain view that's optimistic of the world, then people are drawn to that. What is it that Wordsworth says in Tintern Abbey? We see into the life of things, right? That harmony, that deep power that he comments on. Oh, to struggle, and these are going to be some of the most radical lines in all of these agaths. Remember, we told you,